What if the worst moment of your life turned out to be the exact moment everything changed? What if the person who humiliated you in front of hundreds of people had absolutely no idea who was watching from across the room and what that person was about to do? I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because this story is not one you will be able to walk away from halfway through. A man pushed a woman into a pool at a luxury resort in front of a crowd of people and laughed while she climbed out soaking wet and humiliated. He smiled. He thought he had won. He had no idea that the man standing perfectly still on the other side of that pool had already memorized his face, and that by the end of that week, that smiling man's entire world would be dismantled piece by piece without a single raised voice. This is a story about what happens when someone underestimates the wrong woman. And it starts the moment the water closed over my head. Before we get into it, drop your location in the comments right now. Tell me your city, your country, what time it is where you are watching from. I love knowing where in the world my viewers are tuning in. And if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, please hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications so you never miss a story like this one. Now, let's get into it. The water hit me before my brain caught up with what was happening. 1 second, I was standing at the edge of the infinity pool at the Sevon Grand Resort, laughing at something my friend Jade had just said, holding a glass of fruit punch and feeling, for the first time in a very long time, like I was exactly where I belonged. The sun was warm on my shoulders. My yellow sundress was new. I had bought it specifically for this trip because yellow was the color I had stopped wearing for 4 years, and I was done with that particular kind of erasure. The next second, a hand connected with my back, open-palmed, deliberate, forceful, and the pool swallowed me whole. I went under fast. The punch glass left my hand. The sound of the world went muffled and cold and distant, replaced by the low rushing silence of water. I felt the shock of it before I felt anything else, not pain, not anger, just the deep disorientation of a reality that has tilted without warning. I came up gasping. I pushed the hair from my face and blinked the water from my eyes and looked up. And there he was. Ryan. Standing at the pool's edge with his hand still slightly extended, a slow smile spreading across his face like he had just made a joke that only he found funny. Around us, the entire pool terrace had gone completely silent. 200 resort guests, frozen mid-conversation, mid-sip, mid-laugh, all of them staring. Someone nearby made a sharp sound that wasn't quite a word. A woman to my left covered her mouth. Ryan tilted his head. "Oops," he said, loudly, clearly, making sure the whole terrace could hear. "You should watch where you're standing, Mia." His girlfriend, Chloe, stood beside him with her phone already raised, already filming, already smiling like this was entertainment she had paid for. I was treading water in a soaked yellow dress with mascara stinging my eyes, trying to find the pool steps, trying to hold on to whatever piece of dignity was still available to me in this moment. When I looked across the water and saw a man I did not recognize standing near the far end of the terrace, he was completely still. He was not looking at his phone. He was not whispering to the person beside him. He was looking directly at me, and then, slowly and deliberately, at Ryan, with an expression so quiet and so controlled it made the back of my neck rise, despite the warm water around me. I did not know his name yet. I did not know what that expression meant, but something in the stillness of him told me Ryan was about to find out exactly who he had just performed 4.3 days before that pool. I had not even wanted to come on this trip. My name is Mia. I am 31 years old. I work as a freelance interior designer, which means I spend my days making beautiful spaces for other people while my own apartment has had the same half-finished bookshelf in the corner for 14 months, because I kept finding reasons to prioritize everyone else's walls before my own. Ryan and I had been together for 4 years. We ended 18 months ago, or rather, He ended us by simply beginning something with Chloe while technically still with me, and allowing me to find out through a tagged photo on social media. At a rooftop restaurant. The same rooftop restaurant where he had once held my hand across a table and told me I was the only person he could imagine building a future with. I did not scream when I saw the photo. I put my phone face down on my kitchen table and sat very still for a while, and then I got up and went to work, because that was what I did with pain that had not yet found its shape. The reason I was at the Sivon Grand at all was my college friend Jade's birthday. Jade had organized a group trip, 12 friends, 5 days, one beautiful resort on the coast. She had not told me that Ryan was also invited until 3 days before departure, at which point she apologized so thoroughly and with such visible distress that I said it was fine and I would come anyway. It was not fine. But I was done letting Ryan take things from me, and this trip was something I had been looking forward to for 2 months. So I bought a yellow sundress. I packed my bags. I showed up. Ryan arrived at the resort check-in 30 minutes after I did. He saw me across the lobby and did the thing he always did, the slow, easy smile that said he had already decided how this moment was going to go and was simply waiting for me to catch up. Chloe was beside him, polished and unbothered, looking at me the way people look at something they have already categorized. I smiled back. I was fine. Completely fine. What I did not notice, because I was busy holding my expression together, was the man at the private villa check-in counter on the far side of the lobby. Quiet. Still. Watching everything with the focused calm of someone for whom observation is simply a way of life. I would not notice him until I was underwater. And by then, he had already noticed everything. His name was Jinho. I learned this from the resort manager, who appeared at the poolside within 5 minutes of me climbing out of the water, not to help me, as I first assumed, but to speak in a low, urgent voice to the man who had crossed the terrace and was now standing close enough for me to see his face clearly. He was in his mid-30s. Dark jacket despite the afternoon heat, which should have looked out of place and somehow did not. His face was calm in the specific way of someone who has chosen calm rather than arrive there naturally, controlled, deliberate, and carrying something underneath it that was considerably less gentle. The resort manager was speaking to him with the particular body language of someone addressing a person of significant importance. I was standing in a soaked yellow dress with a towel someone had pressed into my hands, watching this exchange when the man, Jinho, turned from the manager to me. His eyes moved briefly to my cheek, where I had felt a faint sting from hitting the water at a sharp angle. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was quiet and precise. "I'm fine," I said, because that was my standard answer to most things. He looked at me for a moment the way someone looks when they are deciding whether a statement is accurate. Then his eyes moved past me to where Ryan was still standing with Chloe, relaxed and untroubled, already scrolling his phone like the last 2 minutes had been thoroughly unremarkable. "Does he do things like that often?" Jinho asked. I didn't answer. He didn't need me to. He nodded once, the quiet nod of a conclusion being confirmed, and said something brief to the broad-shouldered man who had appeared at his side. The man's name, I would later learn, was Min. He had the kind of stillness that was clearly professional. "Enjoy the rest of your afternoon," Jinho said to me simply. Then he walked back toward the private villa wing without looking at Ryan once. I stood there in my wet dress, watching him go, aware of something shifting very slightly in the air around the terrace. The guests nearest to Ryan had quietly moved a step away from him without appearing to decide to. The resort manager was speaking into his radio with a clipped, purposeful tone. I did not know yet that Jinho's full name was Jinho Kwan. I did not know what that name meant in certain rooms. I only knew that for the first time since hitting that water, my feet felt solid on the ground. Jade found me in my room 20 minutes later, carrying snacks and an expression of extreme guilt. She sat on the edge of my bed while I changed in the bathroom and apologized through the wall, quick, tangled, falling over herself. She had not known Ryan would actually do something. She had thought he had grown up. She had thought it would be awkward at most, and fine by the second day. He was never going to grow up, I told her from behind the door. He was charming. Those two things aren't the same. A silence. Then, Mia. I need to tell you something. I came out. Her face had shifted from guilty to something more careful, the face she made in college right before admitting something she had been sitting on too long. She told me Ryan had been asking about me. Specifically about a residential design project I had completed 8 months ago, a high-end home renovation that had been featured in a regional design magazine. He had called Jade twice asking who the client was, how I had landed the commission, whether I had more work lined up like it. Why would he care? I asked. Jade pressed her lips together. Chloe's family is trying to sell their estate. They need a designer for the staging. Ryan apparently told them he knew someone and could make an introduction. I stared at her. He was going to offer you the job, she said quietly. Like a favor. Like he was doing you something. The shape of this settled in my chest cold and clear. Ryan, who had spent 4 years deciding what I was worth, now planning to step back into my professional life as a benefactor. Planning to position himself between me and an opportunity so that whatever came next would pass through his hands first. He pushed me into a pool, I said flatly. I know. Jade looked miserable. That evening, Jade's birthday dinner was on the open terrace overlooking the water, long tables, candles, the kind of sunset that looked designed rather than accidental. By some arrangement I did not make, I was seated directly across from Ryan. He was charming again, the version of Ryan the room got to see. Laughing easily, remembering everyone's drink order, making the person beside him feel like the most interesting individual alive. Chloe sat at his side glowing. 3 people at the table had already laughed at something Ryan said before the appetizers arrived. I watched the performance the way you watch something you once believed was real and now simply recognize as technique. Halfway through the main course, I became aware of the private dining level 1 floor above us, a smaller terrace reserved for villa guests. I looked up once. I saw Jinho seated with 2 other men, all of them in quiet conversation over what appeared to be business. He was not looking down at our table. I looked away. 10 minutes later, a resort staff member appeared at my elbow and placed a fresh glass of sparkling water in front of me, not the standard pour. Something clearly different, served in a different glass, with a small card beneath it. The staff member bent down and said quietly that it was a compliment from the upper terrace, from a guest who wished me a better evening than my afternoon had been. The whole table looked at the glass, then at me, then upward. Ryan had stopped smiling. Chloe said, brightly and a little too quickly, "Do you know someone in the villas?" I picked up the glass. I took a slow sip. Apparently, I said, and returned to my food and said absolutely nothing else. I did not look up at the terrace above. But in my peripheral vision, Ryan's jaw had gone tight in the specific way it did when something was happening that he had not arranged. That expression used to make me anxious. I used to reshape entire evenings around preventing it. Tonight it felt like the first full breath I had taken since falling into that pool. After dinner, I went walking on the resort's lower cliff path, the one that followed the coast with the harbor lights spread below. I needed air and space and the kind of quiet that only water at night can provide. Jinho was walking the same path from the opposite direction. We stopped about 6 feet apart. He had removed his jacket. He looked less formal in the evening light, but no less composed. That quality was clearly not the jacket's doing. "This seems like it might be on purpose," I said. "The path is a loop," he replied, which was not quite an answer. We fell into step in the same direction without discussing it. He asked about my work, Not a small talk, but with the focused attention of someone who actually wants the answer. I told him about the design project, the magazine feature, the direction I was trying to build toward. He asked follow-up questions. Good ones, the kind that proved he had listened to the previous answer before forming the next. I asked what had brought him to the Sivan Grand. A business matter that is nearly finished, he said. I extended the stay. Why? He looked at me with something that was almost a smile. The afternoon became more interesting than expected. I stopped walking. You don't have to do this, I told him. The drink upstairs was kind. I noticed it. But I am not someone who needs looking after. I know you're not, he said, without any impatience. I'm walking because I chose to. You're free to go back whenever you like. I stood there for a moment. Then I kept walking. We talked until the harbor lights had blurred soft and golden, and neither of us had checked the time. When we reached the resort entrance and said goodnight, I went in my room and sat on the edge of my bed with my shoes still on, trying to name the feelings sitting quietly in my chest. It took me a moment. It was the feeling of being entirely listened to, not managed, not assessed, not positioned. Simply heard by someone who had nothing to gain from the listening. What I did not know was that Ryan had been standing near the lobby doors when we came in from the path. And the expression on his face, I would later learn from Jade, was not the charming one. Ryan found me at the breakfast buffet the next morning. He appeared beside me while I was choosing fruit, holding a plate he was not eating from, wearing his most reasonable expression, the one calibrated for private conversations where there are no witnesses to perform for. He's not someone you want to be involved with, Ryan said, without greeting me first. I did not look at him. Good morning, Ryan. I'm being serious, Mia. Jinho Kwan. I looked him up last night. He said the name with the careful pronunciation of someone who had practiced it. His company has been investigated. There are people in Seoul who won't say his name in the wrong room. You don't know what you're walking into. I put mango on my plate. You're telling me this out of concern, I said. I'm telling you because I know how you are. You trust people too fast and then you end up hurt. The specific thing about this statement, delivered by the man who had pushed me into a pool in front of 200 people less than 20 hours ago, was its complete and uncomplicated confidence. Ryan had never once experienced a moment of doubt about the validity of his own perspective. I turned and looked at him directly. You pushed me into a pool in front of 200 people, I said. Quietly. Without heat. Like reading a sentence from a page. Nothing you say to me carries any weight at all. I walked back to my table. What I did not know was that Ryan went directly from that conversation to the resort's business center. He spent 35 minutes there. When he left, he had sent an email containing Jinho's name, a photograph, and a message carefully worded to reach someone with a very specific kind of history with the Kwan family. The resort had a small reading room off the main corridor, wood-paneled, quiet, with deep armchairs and shelves of books nobody seemed to touch after 9 in the morning. I found it while looking for somewhere to work on a client brief I had been neglecting. I settled into a chair behind one of the far shelves, laptop open, coffee beside me. I had been working for about 40 minutes when the door opened and Ryan walked in. He did not see me. He crossed to the window at the far end of the room and made a phone call. The room was small and quiet, and the shelf between us was not a wall. I heard every word. The person he was calling was someone named Cole. They spoke casually for a moment, and then the conversation shifted and Ryan's voice dropped into the careful, deliberate register he used when he was building something. He described Jinho as someone connected to an ongoing acquisition of land near the resort. He said Jinho was here this week finalizing the final stages of that deal. He said Cole had contacts who could surface certain historical information at the right moment, information that could apply pressure and potentially delay or disrupt the transaction. Then he said my name. He said that my apparent contact with Jinho could be useful if handled with care. He said it the same way you might discuss a door you have found unlocked, not a person, not someone with a history and a life and feelings, but a convenient access point in a plan he was already building. I sat completely still behind that shelf. The coffee went cold. Outside the small window, the resort's garden moved gently in the coastal breeze. I thought about 4 years of being someone else's resource, of being managed and minimized and made small enough to fit whatever shape was required on any given day. I thought I had left that room 18 months ago. I took out my phone and sent Jinho a message. It said, "There is something I think you should know." His reply came in under 90 seconds. "I'm on my way." We sat in the small east courtyard, away from the pool and the terrace and anywhere Ryan might walk past. I told him everything I had heard. I expected to be delivering news. What I received instead was the focused, unsurprised calm of someone hearing a thing confirmed rather than revealed. "Cole Briggs," Jinho said. "That would be my assumption." I stared at him. "You already know who he is?" "Cole Briggs works for a private information firm that has been working against my company's interests for approximately 2 years. They have attempted multiple times to surface damaging records, some fabricated, some taken significantly out of context." He paused. "Your Ryan appears to have found a useful contact." "He's not my Ryan," I said immediately. Something shifted in his expression, small, but I caught it. "No," he agreed. "He isn't." I sat back. "How much did you already know before I told you any of this?" He answered with the direct honesty I was beginning to understand was simply how he operated. He told me that after the pool incident, his team had cross-referenced the resort guest list as a standard precaution. My name had come up. Basic background, my design work, the magazine feature, the previous client who had referred me to 2 more after publication. "You're more accomplished than you let on last night," he said. "I wasn't letting on anything," I said. "I was just talking." "I know," he said. "That's exactly what made it worth listening to." Below the courtyard, the harbor glittered in the late morning. Ryan was somewhere in this resort, currently believing he had an angle and a plan and a resource named Mia who did not know she was being positioned. He had no idea that the resource had already sat down with the subject of his plan and handed over every single detail. I did not expect Chloe to knock on my door. She arrived that afternoon, alone, no Ryan, holding a smoothie in both hands like a small and insufficient peace offering. She looked different without the gloss of the previous days. Thinner somehow. Moving more carefully, like someone managing a persistent ache. I let her in because I was curious, and because I had learned that useful information often came from the most unexpected direction. She sat down. She did not start with an apology, which actually made me trust the rest of what she said more. She started with, "I need to tell you why we're really here." The Sivan Grand, she explained, had not been Ryan's first choice for a trip. He had pushed for it specifically, had offered to cover part of the group cost, had encouraged Jade to extend invitations broadly because he knew from a contact that Jinho Kwan would be at this resort this week finalizing a land acquisition. The estate that Chloe's family was selling shared a boundary with land adjacent to Jinho's purchase. Ryan believed that a casual introduction at a resort would be easier to engineer than any formal business approach that Jinho's team would immediately screen. "He used Jade's birthday," I said slowly. "He used all of you," Chloe said. I looked at her. "Why are you telling me this?" She looked down at the smoothie, then back up. "Because last night he told me that since you'd apparently made contact with Kwan, we should use that connection." She paused. "He said use Mia. Like you were a tool he could pick up." Something quiet and final moved through the room. "I'm leaving tomorrow," Chloe said. "First bus." "I thought you deserved to know everything before I went." I did not tell Jinho about Chloe's visit right away. I sat with it through the afternoon, walking the cliff path alone, letting the full shape of Ryan's plan come clear in my mind before I handed any of it to someone else to act on. I wanted to understand it completely. I had spent too many years being only partially informed about things that directly concerned me. Ryan had not stumbled into this resort by chance or nostalgia. He had engineered an entire social event around a business objective and populated it with people he considered useful, including me. The pool incident had not been casual cruelty. It had been a removal. He had needed me away from a conversation I was accidentally having with a manager, worried it might complicate his timetable. Every piece was deliberate. Every person had been a position on a board he was playing without telling anyone the rules. That evening I went to the villa level and told Jin-ho everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "I want to be honest with you about something." He told me his interest in me from the first afternoon had been entirely separate from Ryan, from Cole Briggs, from the acquisition, from any of it. He said this plainly, without decoration. He said he had spent 2 years making decisions that were entirely calculated, and that watching someone climb out of a pool with their dignity completely intact despite everything had reminded him that some things did not need to be calculated at all. "I'm telling you this," he said, "because you deserve to know the difference between what is real and what is being arranged around you." I looked at this man in that room above the harbor and understood that the thing shifting inside me since that pool, the slow return of something I had packed away, was not just circumstance. It was a choice. And it belonged entirely to me. Ryan came to my door the next morning. Chloe had already gone, checked out before sunrise. Ryan looked worse than yesterday. The charm had cracks in it. "Whatever she told you," he began, "you need to understand her state of mind." "She told me why you chose this resort," I said. "She told me about Cole Briggs." He went very still. "She told me about the pool," I added. The stillness cracked into something harder, the cold, stripped-down calculation that appeared when Ryan's corners became too small. "You're making a serious mistake," he said. "Getting close to someone like Jin-ho Kwon. I know it has never once included pushing someone into a pool in front of 200 people," I said. I closed the door. I stood with my back against it and listened to him in the hallway, his voice low and rapid on his phone. I recognized the frequency of a man calling in something larger than himself, because the pieces he had been moving have started moving back. Downstairs, Ryan was about to send Cole Briggs a message with information he should not have had access to. What he did not know was that Jin-ho's team had been monitoring that communication channel since the previous morning. And what Ryan sent would arrive somewhere he had not intended, carrying consequences he had not calculated. Jin-ho's colleague, a composed, sharp woman named Ms. Sohn, who I met for the first time over coffee the next morning, told me what had been intercepted. Ryan had sent Cole Briggs a message containing what he described as confirmed information on Jin-ho's acquisition timeline, including a specific property reference number. Ms. Sohn explained this number had only been seen by 3 members of Jin-ho's team and 1 person inside the resort's own legal office. Someone inside the resort had given Ryan access to protected information. I thought about the resort manager's visible deference toward Jin-ho. I thought about the business center printer, which served the entire south corridor of the resort. "The legal office is on the south corridor," I said. Ms. Sohn looked at me with the careful attention of someone recalibrating a first impression upward. "Yes," she said. "Business center printers record document metadata," I said. "Print times, file names, login IDs. That is a precise observation. I've worked on enough renovation projects that involve building management systems," I said. "The data trail is always there." By 10 that morning, the resort's head of legal services was being asked to account for his schedule on 2 specific evenings. By noon, the answer produced a silence in Jin-ho's team that I could feel from across the room. The legal officer's name was Daniel. He had worked at the Sivon Grand for 3 years. And he had a financial debt to Ryan that went back 6 years. Ryan had not found this resort by accident. He had placed someone inside it first. His name was Daniel Yoon. Ryan had arranged the position for him 2 years ago, when Daniel had needed work and Ryan had needed infrastructure. Not dramatic. Not villainous. Just quietly useful, the way a man lays stepping stones across a river long before he needs to cross it. I learned all of this sitting in Jinho's villa with Ms. Son, Min, and a quiet man who had arrived by midday flight and whose presence made everyone else in the room slightly more focused. His name, I would later learn, was Mr. Beck. I looked at Jinho. The records Cole Briggs has been trying to use against you. What are they actually? He was quiet for a moment, the quiet of someone deciding how honest to be, then deciding to be fully honest. He told me about a 2020 transaction. A business partner who had made certain decisions, not illegal, but not clean either, and who had died suddenly, leaving a family behind. Jinho had absorbed the liability from those decisions into his own record rather than allow them to surface and strip his partner's widow and children of what little they had left. So you protected a dead man's family, I said, by letting a false story about yourself exist for 4 years. It seemed like the right thing, he said. The complete opposite of every calculation Ryan had ever made. The family, I said. Do they know you did this? No. You need to tell them, I said. Before any of this breaks publicly. If it comes out as a surprise, they have no preparation. If you go to them first, they have time. They have a say in their own story. He looked at me for a long moment. You are considerably wiser, he said quietly, than someone I have known for 5 days has any right to be. Jade called me in tears at 7 that evening. She had found something in the group's shared chat, a message Ryan had sent to 3 people in the circle, apparently intended for just one. In it, he described the trip's real purpose in terms that left nothing to interpretation. He referred to the birthday as a vehicle. He referred to the group as logistics. And he referred to Jade herself as someone who was easy to involve because she never asked inconvenient questions. The person on the phone was not the Jade I had known for 11 years. This one was shaking with a particular kind of anger that comes from discovering that your warmth was used as a mechanism. I told her to feel the full weight of what she was feeling because her anger was completely accurate. Then I told her everything. I want to do something, she said finally. I don't want to just sit here knowing all of this. The group chat, I said. He sent that message accidentally. To the whole group. He never deleted it, Jade said. Screenshot everything, I said. Every message. Every timestamp. She was quiet for a second. Then, done. I went looking for Ryan the next morning because there was a specific conversation that belonged only to us, separate from Jinho's legal team and everything now moving beyond my direct involvement. Ryan had done something to me that went further back than this resort. And I needed to say something about it directly, face to face, before the world closed in around him and the moment was gone. I found him on the lower pool terrace. The same pool. Same afternoon light. He was alone, Chloe was gone. His alliance with Daniel was unraveling, and the charm had nowhere left to perform. What remained was just a man sitting in a sun chair looking smaller than I remembered him being. I sat down across from him without asking. I know about Daniel, I said. I know about the reference number. I know about Cole and what he's been trying to do with the 2020 records. I set my phone on the table between us, the screenshots visible. He looked at the phone, then at my face. The calculation moved across his features. What do you want, he said. The charm was completely absent. What was left was just tired. Nothing from you, I said. I want you to understand something. You watched me rebuild my career from nothing over the past 18 months. You saw my name in a magazine and instead of feeling anything decent about it, you felt the specific discomfort of someone who needs to be the ceiling watching a person they once controlled walk out into open sky. He said nothing. You pushed me into that pool, I said, because you needed me to be smaller again. And I need you to know sitting here, right now, that it didn't work. Not yesterday. Not 4 years ago. Not ever. I stood. I picked up my phone. Jinho's legal team will be reaching out on Monday. I'd find a very good attorney before then. I walked away. He didn't call after me. I did not look back. I heard him exhale behind me long, slow, the particular sound of a man setting down something he had been carrying in the wrong direction for a very long time. It was better than any dramatic ending could have been. That evening on the villa terrace, I told Jinho about the conversation with Ryan. He listened without the satisfaction I might have expected. He seemed, if anything, weighted. I asked what was wrong. He told me that Mr. Beck had received confirmation that Cole Briggs was preparing to release the 2020 records regardless of the acquisition outcome. Not as leverage anymore. As a news story, time to land alongside a major business announcement Jinho's company had scheduled for the following month. If they release, Jinho said, the family I was protecting gets pulled into the story anyway. Then you have to go to them, I said. Before it breaks. If they find out from a news article, they have no time and no choice. If you go now, they can prepare. They can decide how they want to respond. You've been protecting them without their knowledge for 4 years. Let them be part of this last piece. He was quiet for a long time. You keep doing that, he said finally. Doing what? Finding the exact thing I should do next and saying it simply, he said, without asking for anything in return. His hand, resting on the step beside mine, moved the smallest fraction closer. Cole Briggs did not wait for next month. At 11 that night, a version of the 2020 records appeared on a financial news platform. The story was thin, carefully worded, designed to imply without directly stating, but Jinho's name was in the headline. Miss Sohn came to my door at midnight. By the time I reached the villa, Jinho was already fully in motion. I stood in the doorway uncertain, and Jinho looked up and crossed the room. I need to go to Seoul tomorrow morning, he said. To the family. Will you come? Yes, I said. I found a seat at the far end of the room. At 2 a.m, I found a time-stamping inconsistency in the platform's publication record. The story had been uploaded 4 minutes before the account that published it had technically been created. I showed it to Miss Sohn. She took it directly to their legal team as evidence of manufactured content. In the morning, Ryan's key card stopped working. He checked out by 10, without ceremony, into an outcome entirely of his own construction. The family's name was Wu. Mrs. Wu was 64, precise, quiet, with the kind of composure that belongs to someone who has survived things they never expected to and built their life around the surviving rather than the grief. Her son, Thomas, was an architect, steady and observant. Her daughter, Clara, was my age and watched everything with the careful attention of someone who had grown tired of being kept at the edge of important conversations. Jinho sat across from them in their Seoul living room and told them everything. The 2020 records. The decision he had made to absorb the liability without telling them. The 4 years he had held it. What Cole Briggs had released. What was still coming. He told it plainly, without arranging himself as the hero of it, which he clearly was. Mrs. Wu was silent for a long moment after he finished. Then she said, in Korean, Ms. Sohn translated beside me, "You should have told us. We are not fragile." "No," Jinho said. "You are not. I was wrong to decide for you." Thomas looked at me. "And you? How do you fit into this?" I gave the honest answer. "I'm not entirely certain yet," I said. "But I'd like to." Something shifted in the room, small, real, the kind of shift that happens when people stop performing around each other and simply become present together. Clara leaned forward. "The time-stamping discrepancy you found. Can you walk me through it?" I looked at her. I opened my laptop. Yes, I said. We worked for 4 hours. By the time we finished, the Wu family had a complete, accurate counter record, documented, dated, and ready for the moment it needed to be used. Clara had annotated half of it herself, which she did with the focused precision of someone finally being allowed into a room that had always been hers. 3 weeks after the resort, the article ran on a Thursday. The headline was about Ryan and Daniel Yoon, and the information network Cole Briggs had run through Shell media accounts. My name appeared in the 7th paragraph: designer, resort incident, inadvertent connection to a larger scheme, alongside the name of my design project and a mention of the Quan acquisition consultancy contract that had arrived on my desk 2 weeks prior. My phone did not stop for 5 hours. 2 former clients. 1 regional architecture firm. A hospitality group asking about availability. Jade, who sent 9 consecutive messages in all capitals. My mother, who called because she had seen my name somewhere and needed to know if it was good or bad, and when I told her it was very good, she went quiet for a moment and then cried a little, which made me cry a little too. Standing in my kitchen with the contract on the counter and the morning light coming through the window exactly the way I had always wanted light to come through a window. And Ryan. 1 message, no greeting, no sign-off. Hope you're proud of yourself. I read it once. I put my phone face down. I went back to the contract, the one covering 6 properties across an 18-month timeline, the one that had arrived with a handwritten note in Jinho's careful script that said this was a professional assessment, not a favor, and that I was welcome to decline if the work was not right for me, but that he had seen what I built and wanted it on record that he saw it. I was proud of myself. Fully, completely, without immediately qualifying it into something smaller. I had spent too long doing that. I let the feeling be exactly the size it actually was. The charges against Daniel Yoon were filed 4 weeks after the resort. Wire fraud. Breach of fiduciary duty. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Every person Ryan had treated as a tool had quietly, separately, been keeping receipts. Ryan was not criminally charged. But Cole Briggs's network, dismantled in the weeks following the article, took with it 3 client relationships Ryan had cultivated for over a year. Chloe's family ended his involvement in the estate sale entirely. Jade forwarded me a screenshot of a long social media post Ryan had written. It was full of phrases like my perspective and moving forward and choosing peace. The comments were mostly quiet. I did not feel the sharp triumph I might have predicted. What arrived instead was something slower and cleaner, a deep release, like setting down a weight I had carried so long I had stopped noticing it was there. A package arrived from Seoul on a Tuesday. Inside was a small frame sketch, an architectural drawing of one of the Wu family's properties, done in Thomas's confident, trained hand. On the back, so you know what you're working with before you start. Wrapped beside it, a note from Clara. I told my university research supervisor about the timestamping discrepancy. She wants to reference it in a paper on fabricated financial journalism. May I share your name? And from Mrs. Wu, on her personal stationery, my husband trusted Jinho with everything he had. He was right too. I understand now what kind of person earns that kind of trust. I read the last lines several times. There is a specific weight to being told, by a woman who loves someone deeply, that the person you are becoming close to is worthy of that love's highest confidence. It is not a small thing. I sat with it for a long time before I could respond. I wrote back to all 3 of them that evening. To Thomas, the sketch was on my desk and I already had 3 ideas. To Clara, yes, absolutely, and please send the paper when it was finished. To Mrs. Wu, I wrote something longer, that her note meant more than she might realize, that I was learning to walk towards safety rather than away from danger, and that those 2 things were not the same direction, but that I was finally clear on which one I was facing. Jinho was standing behind me when I pressed send. He read it over my shoulder, which I allowed. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said quietly, "She would have liked you." "Your partner's wife?" "Yes." A pause. "He would have too." He had no patience for small people. I leaned back slightly against him. The city below was doing what cities do at night. The sketch was on the wall. The contract was on the desk. I was inside my real life. Not the one someone else had decided I deserved. The one I had walked toward, one honest step at a time. It was a Thursday evening, 4 months after the Sivan Grand. Jin-ho and I were on the terrace of his Seoul apartment, a space I had been inside enough times now to know where the good tea was and which corner got the best reading light in the early evening. He was a reader who marked his pages with whatever was nearby, boarding passes, receipts, once a folded napkin from a restaurant we had gone to in Busan, and there were books with improvised bookmarks on every flat surface, which I found privately wonderful. He asked me something that evening that he had been carefully not asking for 4 months. I had noticed the patience of it. It was not hesitation. It was the deliberate restraint of someone who understood that timing was its own form of respect. He asked if I could see this. Us. The distance between cities managed, the complicated shape of his world navigated honestly, the work and the life, and the version of the future that had neither of us pretending the other was something simpler than what they actually were. I thought about the woman who had spent 4 years being edited into a smaller and smaller version of herself. About the 18 months of careful, quiet rebuilding. About a pool and a yellow dress, and the specific cold of water closing over your head while someone laughs. I thought about everything that had been built since. I looked at Jin-ho, this man who had sat across an afternoon pool and decided that what he saw was worth knowing. Who had asked if I was okay before anything else in the world. Who had handed me a contract and told me clearly to say no if it wasn't right for my work. I thought about the question I had asked him on a cliff path 4 months ago. "Are you dangerous?" He had answered honestly then. He had answered honestly every time since. "I can see it," I told him. "All of it." He reached into his jacket pocket, no theater, no audience, no arranged moment, and placed something small on the table between us in the quiet way of a man for whom real things do not require performance. It was the simplest and most complete question I had ever been asked. I answered it before he finished asking. 6 months after the Sivan Grand, I am standing inside Property 3. The windows have been installed. They do exactly what I told Jin-ho they would do. They hold the ocean the way the room was designed to, the way I spent 3 weeks insisting they should, the way I knew from the first time I stood in this empty space and understood its bones. The morning light is the kind that makes everything it touches feel considered rather than accidental. I walk through slowly with my clipboard, checking the final details before handoff. Jin-ho is across the city in a meeting. He will be here by afternoon. Ms. Sohn forwards a message from Clara's research supervisor confirming the paper has been accepted for publication. I write a 2-sentence reply standing in the middle of the unfinished room with ocean light on the concrete floor. Jade sends a photo of her new apartment. She has been arranging it for 3 weeks and has finally put something on the walls. It looks like her. Entirely, completely like her. A message from Mrs. Wu, through the translation app she still prefers. Thomas says the plans for the East Wing are very good. He says you understand what a room is trying to do before it is finished. I think that is a rare thing. I read it twice. I stand in a room that is not yet finished and feel, with complete certainty, that I understand exactly what it is trying to do. On the corner desk, the temporary one I set up when I first started working the site, is a photograph. Taken 4 months ago on a Seoul terrace, at the exact moment I said I can see it. I don't know which member of Jin-ho's team took it, but it arrived framed on my doorstep the following week with no note, and I have placed it on every desk I have worked at since. In it I am looking at the city below, fully present, fully awake, not smaller than anything, with the expression of someone who has walked a very long way back to exactly where they always should have been. I was not saved at that resort. I was not rescued. I was seen clearly by someone worth being seen by, and the seeing gave me the last piece of confirmation I needed to finish the work I had already begun. Ryan had lost because he had built everything on managing other people, and there is no foundation in that. It holds until the people stop cooperating, and then there is nothing underneath. I had stopped cooperating the moment I climbed out of that pool. The woman in that photograph had always been there. She had been waiting for the right conditions to stop waiting. She was home now, fully, finally, without apology. She had strong opinions about what these windows should frame in the morning light, and every single one of them was right. And somewhere across the city, a man who had crossed a resort terrace without rushing, who had asked if I was okay before he asked anything else, was on his way here. To this room. To this life we were building together with both eyes open, no illusions, no arrangements made behind each other's backs. Just two people who had chosen honesty over comfort, every single time it had mattered. I set my clipboard down. I stood in the morning light. I let myself feel the full size of everything that was now mine, the work, the life, the future stretched out ahead with nothing edited out of it. The pool at the Sivon Grand had been meant to put me in my place. Instead, it had shown me exactly where I stood. And I was never going back. If this story kept you here from the very first word all the way to this last line, that is exactly what this channel was built for. Stories that grip you, move you, and remind you that the people who try to diminish you are always underestimating what is actually standing in front of them. I want to know where in the world you are watching from right now. Drop your city and your country in the comments below. This community reaches every single corner of the globe, and I love seeing exactly where you all are. If you have not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. Every week there is a brand new story waiting for you. Stories about people who stayed standing, who rebuilt from nothing, who found the love and the life they actually deserved. You do not want to miss a single one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end. I will see you in the next story.